You can bring your kids. You can bring man, woman, child. I don't care. I just want to hang out and take over the whole place. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be very cool. So come out, let's hang out, let's get stoked on coffee and stay up all night like Tim said, and that'll be cool. Next week, this is important to know, that next week is the Leadership Summit. It's going to start at 6 o'clock because Chicago's an hour ahead of us, and so it will be a satellite feed from 6 to 7, 15, 7:30, somewhere in there. If you show up at 7 o'clock, service will already be going, and then after that happens, what's going to happen is that we are going to put on a leadership teaching, a video that from the previous year, kind of to prep us for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So next week, come expecting a different format. 6 o'clock is when it starts, and it will be a live feed out of Chicago, all right? So that's the plans for that. If you have your Bibles, flip over to 2 Samuel 23. That's where we're going to end up in just a little bit. But what we're talking about friendship, and we're talking about if you were to live your life in such a way, if you were to wake up with the whole attitude and the whole mindset that if today was my last day to live, how would you live your life and what would change in that? Because that would cause you dramatic change, right? I mean, I've been around enough people and I've gone to the hospital and talked with enough people that have gotten the bad news of life, and the way that they change their life is dramatic. Or if you've ever been in a situation, car wreck, something that puts your life on the line, the way that you look at life completely changes. And so tonight what we're talking about friendship. And so real quick, I would like for you to turn to the person next to you who should and hopefully is a friend and tell them you are smart, you're good looking, and people like you. Go ahead, just say that. You're smart, you're good looking, and people like you. How many of you changed those words to say something completely different? I knew it. And you probably said something like, I'm smart, I'm good looking, and you should like me. Some of you guys said that, right? Some of you guys said that. But here's what happens. When you're nice to somebody, there's something inside you that feels really good. There's something inside you, you're like, hey, that felt good. That was a good deal. And you know what? The truth is that when you're not nice to somebody, there's something inside you that goes, oh, that didn't feel so good, right? Have you ever had those moments where it's like all of a sudden somebody pops out that you wasn't expecting? It's the person inside you that you try and keep in the closet, and all of a sudden that person pops out and you're like, oh, I hope nobody really saw. I hope they didn't go to our church. Or, I hope it wasn't my boss. But so we're talking about friendship. And here's what I believe about friendship. I believe that if you look through the Bible, one conclusion that you can talk about friendship was this, is that God did not intend for people to go through life by themselves. That's just a fact. That God didn't intend for people to go through life by themselves. And one of the proofs that God didn't intend for people to go through life by themselves, there is not a worse feeling in this world than one of two feelings, whether rejection or aloneness. Both of those feelings cause anxiety in a person. Both of those feelings cause stress, cause insecurity. And then the other thing is this, is that when you look for a friend, what do you look for in a friend? What are the characteristics that you look for in friendships? Have you ever thought about that? You see, maybe you don't really think about that, but I'll guarantee you at some point in your life, there will come a process where you think through the friendship card. And the friendship card is that card where you think, what kind of friends do I want? And maybe it's not what kind of friends do I want, but if you have kids, you begin to think, what kind of friends do I want my kids to have? Right? And that changes everything, because before that, it's like, hey, anybody's a friend. But when you have kids, all of a sudden that changes and you start thinking, oh, wait a second. Do I really want that kid to hang out with my kid? And you begin to look at characteristics in a friend, and those become important. There's a scripture in Matthew 22 and 37 and 38, and it's one of probably one of the more famous scriptures in the Bible. And it just talks about, it's really not specifically towards friendship, but here's what I believe about God is I believe that that God didn't make anybody to be alone in this world. And I believe that He made all of us with a need, and that need is to go out and to reach out. And if you check out Matthew 22, 37, 38, it says this. It says, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. You're familiar with that portion of Scripture. And you're probably familiar with the second portion of Scripture that just simply says, and the first is the greatest commandment, and the second one is equally important, that we are supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves. If we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves, then that should mean that we should have neighbors, and we should have neighbors, and we should love them. Okay, I know that's a simple concept, but how many of you have neighbors that you don't love? Okay, it's okay to raise your hand. It's okay to go, oh, no, I got this neighbor, Paul. Let me tell you, I've got this neighbor. But you see, here I have a brother, and he quotes this to me on a regular basis. He just says, Paul, if you want to have friends, you must be friendly. You see, here's the second thing the thing that I believe is if you flip over in your Bibles, all of us come across stories. And when we come across stories, what we do is we find these stories that describe friendships. Have you ever found a story in the Bible that you go, wow, I love that story? Everybody have their favorite story? There's a story, and the story's in 2 Samuel 23, 18, or 8 through 17. And I believe that it's one of the greatest stories in the Bible when it comes to friendship. It says this. It says, these are the name of David's mightiest men. The first was Jeshobeam. I don't know where their mothers came from, but I would never name my kid that. Jeshobeam the Hickhamite, who was commander of the three. Here's what's really cool, is we're gonna read about the three. But the fact that you would be a part of a group that was just simply called the three. You know what I'm saying? That your group would be so cool and so special that you'd walk by and they'd just go, hey, that dude's one of the three. One of the three what? Well, you know, one of the three. It says this, he was a group of the three, the greatest warriors among David's men. He once used his spear to kill 800 enemy warriors in a single battle. All right, as a guy, I'm just like, dude, that's cool. I mean, I'm not sure, girls, if you think that's cool, but guys, that's cool, right? That's cool. And he says, next in rank amongst the three was Eleazar, son of Dodai, a descendant of Ahoah. Once Eleazar and David stood together against the Philistines when the entire Israelite army fled. He killed the Philistines until his hand was so tired that he couldn't lift his sword. And the Lord gave them a great victory that day. The rest of the army did not return until the time was to collect plunder. Next in rank was Shammah, son of Agi, from Harhar. One time the Philistines gathered at Lehi and attacked the Israelites in a field of lentils. The Israelite army fled, but Shammah held his ground in the middle of the field and beat back the Philistines. And it doesn't say this, but the text inferred it. He beat them back by himself. You see, here's what was going on, is the Israelites were kind of in this field, and they were kind of taking a break in the middle of the day, and they're just eating lentils. They're just hanging out. And all of a sudden, the Philistines came upon them, and the other guys, except Shammah, freaked out and ran like girls. They squealed. Sorry, ladies, sorry. But that's what happened. And they ran away, and this one guy named Shammah is standing there, and he's eating his lentils, and he's killing guys. Because he's bad, but here's where this comes into play. Because you go, okay, Paul, that's really cool that these guys were tough. So what? Check this out. Once during harvest time, when David was at the cave of Adullam, the Philistine army was camped in the valley of Rephaim, if I said that right. And what's going on, if you check out the scripture, if you go to, I think it's 2 Chronicles chapter 11, what you find that David was hiding in this cave because the Philistines had been chasing him. And they had been chasing him for so long that he kind of found this cave and he just kind of held his ground there. And one day he wakes up, and I don't know if you've ever done this or not. I don't know if you've ever gone to bed in a safe place and woke up and thought, how did I get here? Have you ever done that? You thought, how did I get here? How did the enemy all of a sudden come to the very place that I was and just totally encamp my life? And this is what happened. And so now he's in this cave, and there's no way out, and the enemy's all around him, and he can't move. And it says that the three, who were among the 30 of an elite group of David's fighting men. So David's camped there with 30 men and the three. They went down to meet him there. David was staying in the stronghold at the time, and the Philistine detachment had occupied the town of Bethlehem. David remarked longingly to his men, "Oh, how I would love some of that good water from the well of Bethlehem." So he's up above this cave that sits outside the town of Bethlehem. The Philistines had taken over the town of Bethlehem and had spilled out around the area where he's encamped. And as he's sitting there and he has no place to go, he just breathes this sigh of, you know that water over in Bethlehem? How would I love some of that? I don't know what it is that makes you sigh, that makes you go, remember where we grew up and where we used to hang out? How great would it be just to be there right now? And he just creates this little sigh. And so David remarked longingly to his men, "Oh, how I would love some of that good water from the well in Bethlehem." You know the one by the gate. So the three broke through the Philistine lines, drew some water from the well, and brought it back to David. How great is that? That hear his friends, they hear the heart's cry that's going on inside him. And all of a sudden, he just goes, man, where we're at is terrible. But wouldn't it be great if we were all hanging out in Bethlehem and we were drinking from the well? And I don't know which one it was, but one of them had to have looked at the other three and said, "Hey, come here, guys. I got a plan. You know, you killed all those guys over there, and you killed all those guys over there, and I took out the 800 guys over there. I'm thinking these guys down this hill are a bunch of wusses." That's what I'm thinking. I know I'm reading into the text. I think these guys are a bunch of wusses. How cool would it be if we would go running right through the middle of Bethlehem, and we would get some water, and we'd bring it back to David? And the other two were like, "That is a great idea. We could almost get killed doing this, right? Yeah, let's do it." Like, okay, and they did it, and check this out. Then this is what happens. And they brought it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. "The Lord forbid that I should drink this," he exclaimed. This is as precious as the blood of these men who risked their lives to bring it to me." So David did not drink it. And this is the example of the three. And you see what just happened here. Is you look at David and you go, "David, what did you just do? These guys just risked their life for you. Why would you reject their gift?" But you see, what you don't realize is that in the Jewish context of an offering, what would happen is when an offering was sacrificed, an animal, and that they would draw the blood, that pagan religions had this ceremony where they would drink the blood. And in a pagan religion, that they would drink the blood, and what they were trying to do is they were trying to take on what they thought was a holiness from the animal that they were drinking from. But the Israelites knew that the animal wasn't holy. And so in the pagan religion, they would take and they would scoop the blood and they would drink it. But when they would make sacrifices to God, what they would do is they would take the blood and they would scoop it up into a handle. They would scoop it up and they would pour it out at the feet of the altar, thus saying, "You are God, and I offer my life to you as a sacrifice." And you see, what David was doing was this. This was a holy, holy moment that the three had said, "You know what? Here's what we want to do. We want to do this for our friend. We want to take this sacrifice. We're going to make a sacrifice, and we're going to put our lives on the line for his life." And when they brought it back, he's saying to his friends, "What you have done for me is holy. And I want you to know that I will offer my life as a sacrifice to you. And see, what I think when we talk about friendships, what I think great friendships are built on is we talk about live like you're dying. And you talk and you think, what would it take to make a great friendship? And you look and maybe you look at your list of friends and you look back and you say, I used to have this great friend. Or man, I can remember this time when me and one of my best friends, we did this. Or maybe you have this list of long relationships that never turned into great friendships. And I think as we take a look at great friendships, the very first thing that I want you to write down in your notes is just simply this. I believe that great friendships get built on great plans. If you're looking about great friendships, and there's something that happens, and I'm not exactly sure why, but the older we get, it seems harder to have great friendships. Have you ever noticed that the older you get, the less friends you have? That there's something about getting older becomes harder to have great friends. And one of the reasons is that because when you were little, you would walk into Safeway into the toy aisle, and you would make a friend because you had something in common with the kid. He wants toys and you want toys, so come stay at my house. And then you get into middle school, and it becomes a little bit harder because now you realize that being cool is more important than just having friends. And so it's not important just to have friends, it's important to have the right friends. Because if you don't have the right friends, then you don't have any friends. And as you play into high school, what you find out is that friendships aren't just about who you hang out with, but really, they're about who you are. And that plays out. And then what happens is you all get out of high school and you grow up, and now everybody's off in college, and you look around and you go, oh, I was trying to find my identity in who I am, and I lost perspective of who all my friends were. And as you get older, now all of a sudden work takes over and marriage takes over. And what we begin to do is we begin to make plans without friends. And I believe that great friendships are built upon great plans. You see, nobody in a friendship ever sits around, like years down the road, when you're hanging out with all your friends that have gone through you through life, and nobody ever sits around and says, hey, do you remember when we sat on the couch all day long and did absolutely nothing? Right? Because if your friends are just hanging out and it's like, hey, what do you want to do? I don't want to do anything. Hey, why don't you come over to my house? What are we going to do? Oh, we're not going to do anything. You're like, I don't really kind of want to hang out with you. And nobody thinks about that. Do you remember the time that we said we were going to go climb all those 14ers and we didn't? Dude, that was great. Nobody does that. Nobody goes, man, that was like the best day of our life. We sat there and we talked about all these plans that we were going to make. And man, wasn't that great? No. I love this where it says, the three. David remarked longingly to his men, oh, how I would love some good water from the well in Bethlehem. The ones by the gate. So the three broke through the Philistine lines. They drew some water from the well, and they brought it back to David. They brought it back to their friend. You see, here's where great friendships are made. Great friendships are made with great plans. What kind of plans do you make? And I believe that great plans revolve around honoring God. Do you have friendships that draw you closer to God, that bring you closer to Him, that you and your friends would lay your lives down as a sacrifice to God? Let's go get some water from the well. Let's do something great with our lives. You see, the second thing I want you to write down is just simply this. I believe that you become great friends and that you become like the people you hang out with. That's the part about friendship. Have you ever noticed that? My wife has this characteristic in her personality. As she sits here, I can share this because she's in the audience, even though I didn't ask her, and she'll let me. But my wife has this characteristic in her personality that when she makes a friend, Within 2 weeks, she has picked up her friend's accent. You guys ever do that? I mean, like, she's my wife, right? And one day she'll come walking through and she'll be like, hey, yo, what's up? I'm like, all right, you're hanging out with Jennifer, aren't you? Yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, okay, the whole hand motion thing is going on. You got that whole Texas accent thing going on. But what we do is we become like the people we hang out with. I think there's something interesting. King Solomon, he wrote this. He wrote this in Ecclesiastes 4, 7 through 9. And what he's writing is this, is he understands and has come to the place where he realizes how important relationships and friendships are. And he says these words. He says one of the saddest things that he's ever witnessed in life, which King Solomon's one of the wisest men that's ever lived. And he says, one of the saddest things I've ever noticed in life is people who go through life by themselves, who are alone. He pens this in Ecclesiastes 4, 7 through 9. He says, you see, I've observed yet another example of meaningless in our world. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It's also meaningless and depressing. And see, this guy, he sacrificed all of his friendships for wealth. And then he turns and he says, you see, here's the deal. Because I know that 2 people can accomplish more than twice as much as one. They get a better return for their labor. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But people who are all alone when they fall are in real trouble. And on a cold night, 2 under the same blanket can gain warmth from each other. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated. But 2 can stand back to back and conquer. And 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And you see, I believe that one, we become like the people we hang out with, but also the people we hang out with should always make us look more like Christ, should always make us look more godly, because I believe that God didn't make us to go through life alone. The second thing I want you to write down is this, is I believe that great friends stand together and defend each other. If you're looking at this story, one of the great parts about this story is this, is that you have Eleazar and you have David, and they're standing back to back with the Philistines on either side of them. Everybody else has ran, but you have David and Eleazar. And all they needed was one friend who would stand by you. Have you ever been in a situation where that situation caused you a lot of stress, and when you looked around, all of your friends had left you? Have you ever done that? I think that if given enough time, most people will go through a life crisis like that. A life crisis where when your whole life is falling apart, when you're right in the middle of a battle, and when you need somebody, you look up and it seems like there's nobody. And there is nothing like getting that one knock on the door or that one phone call that just simply says, hey man, I'm just here to check on you, just to see how you're doing. This week I had a friend, I was talking with another friend of mine, and this friend of mine said, hey, did you hear what happened to such and such? I said, no, I didn't hear that. And it was like this guy just kept having thing after thing after thing happen to him. And you watch your friends go through something, you're like, oh, that's a bummer. You watch your friend go, oh, that's a bummer. And I just picked up the phone and I just dialed his number and I just said, hey, I'm just checking to see how you're doing because you've had a terrible summer. He literally started crying on the other end. And he said, Paul, you would have no idea what your phone call would mean to me at this point in my life. See, I believe that people don't need a ton of friends. People don't need 30 or 40 or a big long checklist of people that they can look in their thing and go, man, that's my friend, that's my friend. Here's what they need. They need one person who's going to stand by their side. When everything falls apart, they have that one friend. John Maxwell says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That as Christians, we are called to be that person who stands no matter what's going on in our friends' life. 2 Samuel 23, 9 through 10. Once Eleazar stood together against the Philistines, and as the entire army fled, he killed the Philistines until he was too tired to hold the sword. You see, here's what I believe. As Christians, we're called to love people no matter where they're at. That we're called to be the people that say, I don't care what happens in your life. I got your back. I don't care what you're going through. You know what? Even in reality, that although I might not agree with the decision you made, you need to know I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be with you on the good side and the bad side. That just because you defend a person doesn't mean you're defending their cause. Does that make sense? Everybody needs a friend that's willing to stick with them, and just because they don't agree with what you're doing at that time in your life, just because your friends aren't making the choices that you want them to make, or your family's not making the decisions that you want them to make, or whoever it is, the people at work aren't making the decisions that you want them to make. Defend the person. Don't defend the cause. Because hurt people need a doctor too. Proverbs 18:24 says, there are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. John 15:13 says, greater love has no one than this, that he lays down his life for a friend. Mark 2:17 says, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. You see, I think that way too many times as Christians, we make this moral decision that says we want to fight for morality, but we don't want to fight for people. That we want to fight for what's right, but we don't want to fight for who's wrong. And so we watch people as they go through life, and as we watch people as they make the big mistakes in life. And we watch from the sidelines instead of from the side. You see, I think there was a time in David's life that he looked back and he looked at Eleazar and he said, man, thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for being by my side. Thank you for not leaving me. And as Christians, I think the world would have a completely different perspective of Christ if Christians would have a different perspective of those who don't know Christ. And that you walk up and you say, you know what? I want you to know that no matter how this thing plays out, I'm here for you. I want you to know I love you. I want you to know I care for you. I want you to know that I got your back. The third thing I want you to write down is simply this. You see, when you're looking for friendship that you're going to be willing to stake your life on, always look for friendships that make you a better person. Always look for friendships that make you a better person. If you have friendships that don't draw you closer to God, you have wrong friendships. If you have friendships that don't make you laugh until you're laughing so hard, Coca-Cola is running out your nose, everybody needs those friendships. Friends that make you relax. Friends that love you for who you are and forgive you for who you are. Right? Because everybody has friends that love you for who you are. But they love you for who you're not. Do they forgive you for who you are? That's the type of friends that you're looking for. Proverbs 17:17 says a friend is always loyal. And a brother is born to help you in times of needs. If your friends don't make you a better person, catch this, this is important. If your friends don't make you a better person, don't abandon the friendship, but you may need to abandon the relationship. Do you understand what I'm saying by that? If your friends don't make you a better person, don't abandon the friendship. What I mean by that is this, that you're going to have certain friends that when you make your lifestyle change, when you realize that when you hang with these people, you don't do what's right. Got those friends? Okay. We've all if you don't have those friends, then you have definitely had those friends, right? Everybody does. And you have to come to a place in your friendships where you choose to live a life that honors God regardless of where your friends are going. But that does not mean you abandon the friend. It means you abandon the relationship. It means you abandon the day-to-day activity. It means you abandon the fact of where they're going. And you don't abandon the friend, but you always draw the friend towards where you're going, towards Christ. You don't have to not like the person. You don't have to talk behind the person's back. You don't have to run the opposite way when you see the person. But here's what I believe. I believe that the only thing worse than knowing what is right and doing what is wrong is when you've come into contact with God and you know what is right and you continue to draw your friends down the path which is wrong. That you know what is right, but you won't take a stand for what's right. You know what is right, and not only do you not take a stand for what's right, you don't just not take a stand for what's right. You actually take people down a path which is wrong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to close tonight. And we're going to ask the worship team to come back up. We're going to do one last song. I would like for you during this last song to examine your friendships. To examine your friendships and begin to look at those and go, okay, God, in what areas do I need to make my friendships and my adjustments to bring honor to you? Lord, in what way do I need to take a stand amongst my friends that would bring honor to you? Lord, in what way and what friend do I need to share with you? And then, Lord, what friends can I begin to make plans with that would bring great glory and honor to you? And I'd like for us to take a look at our friendships. The last thing that I'd like for you to do is just simply this. That you would make an effort tonight, that you'd come out to Starbucks and would hang out and would make friends, and maybe tonight you'd make all kinds of new friends and make all kinds of new acquaintances. Because everybody needs friends that will watch their back. And that you would give yourself an opportunity tonight to just come and meet people and increase your friendship realms instead of decrease them. All right? So that means when you come, you've got to be nice to people. All right? Let's worship.